Deep within every wild creature, a biological radar scans continuously for danger. Speed, trajectory, line of sight, all are processed instantly. The resulting directive is nearly universal: flee from the human. This survival instinct isn't a learned lesson. It operates flawlessly even in species that have never encountered a person. Tested in rigorous laboratory environments and validated across countless ecological studies, this intense aversion is hardwired at a cellular level, passed down through generations. Yet, when humans intervene to save a trapped animal, severing a net, extracting it from thick mud, or snapping open a steel snare, we frequently assume the creature recognizes our benevolent intent. Data suggests otherwise. A completely different phenomenon is unfolding, and biologists who have dedicated their lives to animal behavior are still debating its exact terminology. To understand it, consider the profound physiological impact of captivity. The second a wild animal loses its freedom of movement, its body enters a crisis state with no human equivalent. Cortisol floods the system. Adrenaline surges to thresholds that would prove fatal if maintained for more than a brief period. The heart accelerates to 4 times its normal pace. A report in the European Journal of Wildlife Research revealed that large mammals ensnared in fencing exhibit significantly higher cortisol spikes than those suffering from gunshot wounds or vehicle collisions. It is a stress response more acute than being shot. The organism is depleting its ultimate reserves, activating ancient emergency systems to either battle to the death or wait for the end. Externally, this agony is unmistakable. Pupils widen completely, and muscles don't merely tense. They lock with absolute rigidity as the body commits entirely to survival. The jaw may slacken, and respiration becomes shallow and frantic. Wildlife rehabilitators note that the animal seems to mentally detach, present in body but entirely consumed by the immediate threat. Consequently, when a human approaches an ensnared animal, the creature does not perceive a savior. It perceives an apex predator arriving at its moment of maximum vulnerability. This is why its thrashing intensifies as you draw near. The nervous system decodes proximity as the final strike of a hunt, prompting the animal to expend its remaining energy on its primal defense. Then, occasionally, a profound shift occurs. The animal freezes. This is not the stillness of exhaustion, but something far more focused. Field researchers witness a visible transition. The rigid, hyperextended muscles yield slightly. The panicked struggle ceases, and the creature orients itself, not away from the human, but directly towards them, locking its gaze. In late 2005, a commercial fisherman discovered a female humpback whale hopelessly entangled in nylon ropes off the California coast. The lines snared her mouth, flippers, and tail, weighted down by a dozen heavy crab traps that constantly pulled her under. She was exhausting herself just to keep her blowhole clear of the water. A rescue team arrived rapidly. 4 divers slipped into the ocean with specialized knives, fully aware that a single lash of her massive tail could kill them instantly. The moment they entered her environment, she went perfectly still. For over an hour, she floated quietly at the surface while they labored. Periodically, she adjusted her massive body, turning, extending a pectoral fin, altering her position, in ways that actively allowed the divers better access to the binding ropes. A 50-ton giant chose absolute stillness while strangers sliced lines across her skin. Many biologists explain this through threat pattern recognition. A predator closing in for the kill moves rapidly, aggressively, and on a direct trajectory. This specific behavioral sequence is exactly what an animal's internal alarm is tuned to detect over millions of years of evolution. A rescuing human, however, breaks the script. They move slowly, avoid sudden gestures, focus on the trap rather than the body, and make no sounds that match the predatory catalog. As the animal's brain searches its library of danger signatures, it returns no matches. Without a recognized pattern to trigger a defensive assault, the crisis engine stalls. The animal simply waits. In Yellowstone, researchers encountered a wolf caught in a leg trap. True to its biology, the wolf lunged and snapped at anyone who drew near. One scientist stopped moving and locked eyes with the predator, holding its gaze steadily. In mammal communication, eye contact between predator and prey carries immense weight. A hunting predator does not usually maintain static eye contact. It tracks movement, watches the body, and calculates the strike. A sustained, unmoving gaze devoid of aggression represents a signal completely outside the standard hunting template. Some scientists theorize it may register as a form of social engagement rather than a threat. The wolf's internal alarm system, looking for a predator pattern, met an anomaly it couldn't categorize. After a few minutes, the wolf stopped fighting and sat down, returning the steady gaze. As the team worked on the mechanism, the wolf quietly watched their hands. Once freed, it paused, looked directly back at the researcher, and calmly trotted into the forest. Field biologists label this phenomenon a suspension of the threat response rather than a deeper emotional connection. The internal alarm doesn't shut down, it simply loses its anchor. The anticipated predatory sequence never materializes, leaving the crisis reaction with nothing to lock onto. The more elusive mystery is what occurs after liberation. When the final line was severed from the humpback whale, she did not flee. Instead, she swam in elegant circles around the divers, eventually surfacing beside each one to gently nudge them with her jaw, moving methodically from person to person. One diver recounted the experience as a profound expression of gratitude. Scientists treat such vocabulary with extreme caution. Marine mammals interact with divers in various contexts, and behaviors following massive physical trauma are notoriously difficult to interpret objectively. Yet, humpback whales possess spindle neurons, highly specialized brain cells tied to empathy, emotional processing, and rapid social calculation. Once thought to be exclusive to primates, these cells mean the whale possesses the precise neurological hardware required for complex social processing. Whether she utilized it that day remains beyond the reach of raw data. Similarly, young elephants rescued from mud wallows in Kenya have been observed making deliberate physical contact with their saviors, placing their trunks against hands and arms before departing. This gesture is deeply significant. An elephant's trunk is its primary sensory instrument, packed with over 40,000 muscles and a concentration of nerve endings mirroring human fingertips. When an elephant extends its trunk to touch someone intentionally, it is an investigative act, not a random reflex. Rescuers note that the animals frequently hold this contact for several long seconds, pressing quietly against the human skin before pulling away with a slow, deliberate motion that contrasts sharply with reactive panic. Elephants mourn their deceased, identify their own reflections in mirrors, and retain vivid social memories for decades. They routinely revisit the skeletal remains of dead companions, gently touching the bones of family members who passed away years prior. The cognitive sophistication required to differentiate between a human causing harm and one delivering freedom is entirely within their capacity. Some researchers take the hypothesis further, pointing out that liberated elephants often remain near their rescuers far longer than a simple suspension of threat would dictate. The danger has passed, the bond of the trap is broken, and there is no evolutionary mandate to stay. Yet multiple accounts detail elephants standing peacefully alongside humans for several minutes post-release, neither fleeing nor foraging, simply coexisting, before finally wandering off. The definitive answer to whether wild animals truly comprehend human rescue remains scientifically unproven. What the evidence confirms is that certain highly evolved species, cetaceans, elephants, canids, measurably halt their defense mechanisms when a calm human operates around them without escalating the tension. What happens after the rescue includes orientation toward the human, intentional physical contact, and behaviors devoid of any obvious survival utility. What science cannot quantify is the internal reality of those moments. We cannot know what it feels like to be the wolf pausing at the forest edge, watching the humans walk back to their vehicles. We cannot look inside the mind of the whale as she touched each diver in those frigid waters. Whether it possessed an internal meaning for them is a secret the data cannot unlock, leaving us to wonder if we find profound depth in these encounters simply because we, too, are animals driven by pattern recognition. And the pattern we recognize most is ourselves. A version of this mystery will eventually be solved with greater precision. Our technological diagnostic tools are evolving rapidly. Neuroimaging for cetaceans, long-term behavioral tracking of elephant clans, and structured data collection during wildlife interventions. The evidence will mount, and current ambiguities will dissolve. For now, the scientists who study this phenomenon most deeply choose to leave the question open. The animals themselves offer no final reply.